everyone. I'm Susan Allen of the U.S. PanAsian American Chamber of Commerce. Thanks for joining day one of our three-day CelebrASIAN Business Development Conference, Part 2. The first part was held in June to great success. Our theme, Synergy Forward, speaks to our collective momentum that is built on trust, togetherness, and partnership. It's a new world out there, but despite the many unequaled challenges, we continue to lift up each other and open doors through shared values and collaboration. Together, we step into a future where our differences are celebrated and our partnerships are cherished. From this, we aim to build a strong foundation for a new tomorrow filled with promising opportunities for all. At this conference, we will have candid and substantive discussions, informative workshops, energy-filled business networking events where some of the best minds across industries connect with PanAsian American and other diverse-owned businesses to amplify our messages, perspectives, and knowledge. We will celebrate and elevate partnerships, old and new, among corporate, government, academic entities, PanAsian American, and other diverse-owned businesses. Earlier today, we kicked off CelebrASIAN with a fireside chat with Charlie Scharf, CEO and President of Wells Fargo. We discussed a range of issues, including the bank's diversity and inclusion programs and how we could help minority and diverse-owned businesses grow and thrive in the post-pandemic world. Now, we continue the momentum with our Synergy Forward panel. I'd like to invite Mark Madrid, Associate Administrator, Office of Entrepreneurial Development at the U.S. Small Business Administration, to give remarks on this panel's theme today. Mark has a long professional life in building community and business coalitions, served as executive of state and local Hispanic Chambers of Commerce, and in the last 5 years, oversaw the Latino Business Action Network, which partnered with Stanford University to train the next generation of Hispanic multi-million-dollar enterprises. Mark, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Susan. Thank you for that wonderful introduction and your instrumental leadership as the CEO and National President of USPAACC. I am energized to be here, is the bottom line, and it is the highest honor imaginable to serve U.S. small businesses under the illustrative and results-driven leadership of SBA Administrator Isabella Casillas Guzman. At the SBA, we are dedicated to serving all American small businesses and entrepreneurs, and it is with great enthusiasm and commitment and energy that we focus today on the AAPI community. What a fantastic lineup in the Synergy Forward panel. You're going to hear from phenomenal leaders, and I can't think of a better and more significant time to join you than this one, CelebrASIAN Business Development Conference. What a great name. This is a particularly special time for us as we recently announced our grantees of the historic Community Navigator Pilot Program. Funded through the American Rescue Plan, the Community Navigator Pilot Program is a $100 million competitive grant program, which integrates trusted organizations at a hyperlocal level and community champions who have direct access and connection to the small business owners who need us collectively right now. Recently, we announced the 51 grant awardees, and USPAACC was selected through a competitive review process as one of the 8 Tier 1 national recipients of a $5 million Community Navigator Pilot Program Grant Award. Among the leaders that you'll hear from in the Synergy Forward panel today are Ramiro Cavazos of the U.S. Hispanic Chamber of Commerce and Ron Busby of the U.S. Black Chambers, both organizations who received $5 million Community Navigator Pilot Awards also. We look forward to the outcomes generated from the Community Navigator Pilot Program, and in the words of Administrator Guzman, to build bridges deep into our communities and to connect with those entrepreneurs who need our help right now. This Synergy Forward panel has demonstrated track record and service commitment in working with our underserved and underrepresented business owners. The Community Navigator pilot program is just one of the many ways that the Biden-Harris administration is advancing equity for our nation's small businesses. Under President Biden's executive order, we must remove potential barriers that underserved communities and individuals may face in utilizing agency procurement and contracting opportunities. This group assembled here is well positioned to discuss the remarkable significance of certification and procurement, which will level the playing field and advance equity. Thank you to USPAACC, US Black Chambers, NMSDC, WeBank, DisabilityIN, NGLCC, NAVOBA, NVBDC, and the USHCC. Thank you for your notable national leadership. The diversity of this group is truly outstanding. And it is on that note that I'll share my final message. While you all serve distinct constituencies, it is more important than ever, as Susan mentioned, to work together and build coalitions, enduring coalitions that will stand the test of time. The diversity of this panel that Susan and her team have assembled truly embodies this spirit of coalition building. And in conclusion, on behalf of SBA Administrator Guzman and our unrelenting commitment from our SBA colleagues here from DC, we all send our deep gratitude for the work that you are doing for our nation's small businesses. Enjoy the Synergy Forward panel. Thank you all.
Thank you, Mark, for honoring us with your presence. I can't help but have a big smile. And you took the line away from me, and you did it well. And your remarks, your very kind words and encouraging words about all of us, the work that we do, and for the very important leadership role you play at the SBA. Thank you very much. Now we're delighted to have with us a unique group of industry leaders on our Synergy Forward panel. They lead the country's top national organizations that represent Asian, Black, Hispanic, women, LGBT+, disability folks, and veteran-owned businesses that most of them also have a certification program for their unique constituents. You can't get anything better than this, folks. And we're proud to gather all of them here for a candid and substantive exchange of views on supply diversity. They will share their experiences in supply diversity and certification and where business opportunities are. And they will shed light on how our 9 independent organizations could all work together, harness the power of synergy, and move forward to help our constituents grow and thrive in the post-pandemic marketplace. I will introduce them to you in alphabetical order of the organizations that they lead. Jill Houghton, President and CEO, DisabilityIN. Justin Nelson, co-founder and president, National LGBT Chamber of Commerce. Ying McGuire, President and CEO, National Minority Supplier Development Council. Matthew Pavlik, President and CEO, National Veteran-Owned Business Association. Thank you, Matt. Keith King, founder and CEO, the National Veteran Business Development Council. Thank you for coming, Keith. It means a lot. Ron Busby, President and CEO, US Black Chambers, Inc., my brother of 15 years. Pamela Prince Eason, President and CEO, the Women's Business Enterprise National Council. Pam, a giant in women businesses. Now, Ramiro Cavazo, CEO of US Supplier Chamber of Commerce, is in Mexico and is unable to join because of technical difficulties. And we had a little bit with one of our leaders, but we understand. So at the last minute, he is ably represented by Raul Salinas, board member and general counsel of the U.S. Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. Raul, thank you so much for stepping into this seat and represent the U.S. Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. And yours truly, Susan Al Allen. I'm the national president and CEO of U.S. PanAsian American Chamber of Commerce Education Foundation. Welcome to you all. Welcome to you all. Each of us here represent unique constituents in the supply diversity market: Asian, Black, Hispanic, women, LGBT+, disability, and veterans. We have specialized knowledge about them, and that's why they come to us. We all do similar things. The most of us, 35 businesses owned, controlled, and managed on a day-to-day basis by these unique groups. We develop and connect them with corporations, government, large nonprofits, so they can do business with each other and us. According to the census, minorities will be the majority in less than 30 years. In terms of population, 1 in 3 Americans today is a minority: Asian, Black, Hispanic, Native American. For spending power, they have a combined checkbook of $4.9 billion. Trillion dollars as of last year. In job creation and employment opportunities, minority enterprises are the largest employers of minority workers. What are the values and opportunities for corporations, governments, and large nonprofits to partner with our organizations? Why do they care to do so? This is my first question. Ying?
Yeah, why would they care to do so? That's a great question. First of all, thank you, Susan, for hosting this panel and for inviting all of our amazing peers to this panel. So there are tremendous economic values to corporations and government agencies. I remember when I was leading Dell's supply diversity and procurement team, I went to our CIO staff meeting and to basically persuade them to embrace supply diversity. And the CIO asked me a question: why should we embrace supply diversity? And so at that time I said, do you know that for Dell Technologies, we have a $4 billion revenue from federal government that requires us to meet our supply diversity goals. And so that was the easy part. But beyond that, supply diversity allows a company to expand more easily into the markets with different demographics. Susan, you talk about $4.9 trillion spend, and University of Tennessee, where Pam's located, did a study recently that companies that earmark 20% and up of their spending for diverse suppliers report that 10 to 15% of their annual sales came from the supply diversity programs. So that's tremendous. It's really economics. In 2019 for Coca-Cola, they did a study and they found that individuals who were aware of Coca-Cola's supply diversity initiatives, 49% of them were more likely to use Coca-Cola product. And that estimated resulted, 670,000 customers for them. And so it is the economics. At NMSDC, our certified MBEs generated a $400 billion in economic output annually that led to creation of 2.2 million jobs and $49 billion in annual revenue for local, state, and federal tax authorities. And those numbers are steadily increasing. So it is the economics.
Great, thank you. Well, let me ask Ron. Ron, do you want to join in on this question?
Yes, and thank you so much, Ying, for the introduction of some of the challenges that corporate America faces. And thank you, Susan, for bringing us together. You and I met probably over 12 years ago to discuss your role in creating a certification program for Asian-owned businesses. In your community, along with Black businesses across the country, really felt systematic challenges that were unique to our communities last year. The Black business community, we lost 41% of Black-owned businesses in 2020 between the months of February and April. The U.S. Black Chamber represents 150 chambers in 42 states across the country with a membership base of over 350,000 Black-owned businesses. And when many of those businesses were asked, where was corporate America, where was the federal government in trying to make sure that we were able to participate in many of the stimulus packages, as well as some of the programs that were created by the administration. And many of our members were stating the same thing that I've been challenged with over the last 15 years, and that is minority programs are great, but in specific times of challenges like we've seen over the last couple of years, we need to make sure that we're having an intentionality, that we're creating programs that are meeting the needs of communities across the country. And when we're discussing Black-owned businesses, we need to make sure that we're creating programs that are unique to make sure that they're meeting the needs of those businesses as well as the communities. And so the U.S. Black Chamber last year created a program called Buy Black. We found that 70% of corporate Americans are looking to do business with Black firms that are certified, particularly as Black-owned businesses. And up until recently, there have been all certified under minority programs. And so we followed really the suit of the U.S. PanAsian Chamber, the U.S. Gay and Lesbian Chamber, to make sure that we were able to create programs that were identifying our unique businesses so that they could be found. We found that Black consumers were looking for Black products and services, as well as corporate America. And when you're looking for minority programs, trying to find particularly Black businesses or Asian businesses or Hispanic businesses, many times it gets convoluted. And so corporate America was asking for unique programming that provided unique opportunities for those particular communities. And so we're happy to be here along with the other organizations that are representing their communities and are representing their businesses. We think this is a definite move forward for America. Last year, we saw that President Biden went to Tulsa, Oklahoma on the anniversary, 100 years after the burning down of Tulsa, and made a commitment to spend more than up to 15% with minority firms. We challenged him to say, how are you going to do that? And we need to make sure that there's transparency, that there's intentionality, and that there's real partnerships. And I think that this group is able to provide all three of those concerns.
Thank you. Thank you, Ron. You can see, I'm asking all the minority groups first. All right, so I'm going to ask Raul Salinas, representing Hispanic community, to come and speak to this point. Raul, I need your mic.
Thank you very much, Susan, for including me. I'm happy to fill in for Ramiro Cavazos, our President and CEO of the U.S. Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, and very honored to be following Ying and Ron, whose comments I completely agree with. I will say that the certification process is extremely important because it helps identify for corporate America those worthy and established corporations with whom they should be doing business. Across the country, there's study after study that shows that statistically, corporate America is just not reaching those procurement numbers that they have set out for themselves. So if you're a major bank, a national bank, and you take a look at your procurement numbers, and you're at 1%, and you say, well, we've doubled that. Well, that's just 2%. That's not saying very much at all. And so the ability to certify is just one step of what I believe is a larger ecosystem that's required for businesses across the country. You know, we saw through the PPP program that many businesses of color, when many small businesses did not have the digital capacity to be able to line up and participate in that first round of lending. And, you know, the certification process, the growing what I believe to be digital divide here in many small communities of color it needs to be addressed. But we have to start first with the certification process. And that in turn, I think, serves as a synergistic opportunity for very many small businesses to learn from others and to follow the path that has been created. So thank you very much. I echo the comments that have been made by others this morning, and happy to participate further.
Thank you, Raul. Now let me move to the diverse groups, women, LGBTQ+, and veterans. What are the values and opportunities for corporations to work with groups such as yours? Pam?
Thank you, Susan. I too want to echo everyone's thanks to you on having us all together. It's wonderful to have members of the National Business Inclusion Consortium here discussing the topics that you're bringing front of mind to everyone. So again, thank you so much. I love working with you. The real benefit is finding the bona fide business. So I'm repeating a lot of what you're hearing here. The certification does that. And so ensuring certification exists, it's a differentiator, very important, and corporate America, as well as the government, the SBA, knows they can come to all of us for that. So that's a real positive. Developing these businesses to ensure that as the supply chain changes, the entities that we each support have the knowledge to understand what those changes are is ultra critical. And so that development role is one we all take very seriously and needs to exist. And we need to ensure that we provide resources. So whether that's helping during times of great stress as we've just gone through, or whether it's creating access to capital, or it's some other form of providing resources, we're the place that we need to do that, and we need to do it as a partnership. In some ways, Rebate is a benchmark of what happens with each and every one of you. I have the distinct honor of having women-owned businesses that are veteran, that are differently abled, that are of all colors, that are different gender, etc. And so we're just honored to have this role and to see the changes that all of our businesses are going through. And we look forward to working with each of you in order to do that.
Thank you, Pam. Thank you. Justin?
Well said, Pam. Very well said. You know, I want to go back to something that Ying said, but first let me thank you, Susan, for bringing us all together. The gang's back together here. Always exciting to see these faces and get a chance to chat even through the virtual world. Ying said it very well, and I think it's really important to realize that diversity also means diversifying the revenue stream. So if you are not being inclusive, you're being exclusive. And the reality is, especially in today's highly competitive market, companies need to be seeking out every single possible way they can to connect and identify with the market. Part of that is through what they do in the workforce. Part of that's through supplier diversity. Part of that is through their outreach and engagement efforts. When a company really brings all of those things together, they do what we call it in GLCC, completing the circle of corporate diversity. It's not just about marketing. It's not just about having the right HR policies. It's not just about supplier diversity. It's about all of those things. And they really are intertwined. When we see ourselves in the suppliers that my company is buying from, I want to work harder for my company. And in fact, the average LGBTQ employee spends between 10 and 25% of their work week worrying about being discriminated against or being fired for nothing more than being who they are. You know, as a social justice person, I find that horrible. But as a business person, I find it equally abhorrent, because that means 10 to 25% of that employee's productivity is out the window, and that hits the bottom line. So there is an economic reason for companies to be inclusive in their HR practices and in their supplier diversity. Aside from that, the reality is that diverse suppliers, and contrary to, I think, some belief that we're, you know, a charity, we're giving a handout to a business. You're not. You're actually engaging and working with qualified businesses that can be quicker, more nimble, in many cases more cost effective, and more responsive to needs of major corporations. So there are a myriad of reasons why companies should be looking to our organizations and the collective certified diverse supply base to really amplify what they're trying to do in communities and do it in a cost-effective way that really helps build up our communities. I always like to use a quote from a former Senator Paul Wellstone of Minnesota. We all do better when we all do better. And when companies can do better by doing good in our communities, when our businesses can thrive and lift one another up, it's a good day. And that's one of the most important things about this collaboration that we're showcasing today, is that we really are supportive. And to Pam's point, you know, we really are intertwined. There's so much intersectionality right now. So many of us have stakeholders that are shared, not only on the corporate side, but on the supplier side. So I think those are just a few ways that corporations can benefit by really thinking about the 360 of inclusion and supplier diversity. Thanks.
Great. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, you hear now, you're hearing from the experts. So let's bring the veterans group in. First, Matt Payfleck, would you talk about your specific industry?
Thank you very much, Susan. I really do want to thank you for including us as NAVOBA, and thank you for including the veteran community in this. And I really want to echo what Pam and Justin said about the intersectionality. One of the greatest things about the military veteran community is vets are everybody. For the last 45 and a half years or so, they've all volunteered to serve our country, and they come from all walks of life. And so specifically addressing how corporations can benefit from including veterans as suppliers, very much like Justin pointed out, the spending power of the veteran community is $1.5 trillion. If you look at the 26 million veterans that are out there, and the average consumer spending of the military households is slightly larger than other households on average. And so it's something that really does impact the bottom line. And one of the things that this pandemic has taught us is almost everything can be politicized. One of the few, if not only, apolitical issues left is supporting not only diversity, but supporting our veterans community. And so once again, the American consumers are much more concerned about with whom they're spending their money and what that organization represents than a lot of other factors. And so doing business with veterans is simply very good business for corporate America. Thank you again for including us, Susan. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Keith. Matt, for also helping us to catch up with time. Keith?
Thank you, Susan. You know, in the sense of the question, the value of supplier diversity, we finished our national event last week, and part of that was a panel of supplier diversity professionals from all kinds of industry. And we found it really interesting. One of the comments that was made was that the certification that we provide, all of us provide, really makes their lives easier in the sense of looking at their job. They have to capture the spend, they have to report the spend, and they have to look at how they're putting it in, what buckets they're putting it in. And it's just a lot easier for them, was their comment, to say, hey, I know that I'm using a veteran-owned business or a woman or minority or whatever business type that they're working on. And they really have a value to our certification because they believe in it. And I think that has been a major shift in the sense of saying, hey, if I'm hiring a supplier and that supplier happens to be a woman-owned or minority or veteran-owned, and that company has the backing of one of our certification units, then that makes their life easier. It makes their work internally when they're talking to their buyers and the program managers and the purchasing agents or purchasing VP that says, look, we know that this company has been certified by whichever group, and that we want to make sure that we're being a good corporate citizen, that we're doing, whatever all of that commitment is, to supplier diversity. And so we find that the value of certification, especially our certification of this group, really took on a different meaning to me anyways, and I think was expressed differently than at least I've heard it in the last 9 years. And back to you, Susan.
Thank you. Thank you. And for disability in, Jill?
Susan, thank you so much for the opportunity to be part of this important conversation. I'd almost like to say ditto to everything that I've heard. I think the one thing that I haven't heard that I'll bring to the conversation is just the importance from a corporate standpoint of looking at what your investors are asking for and what your shareholders are asking for. And I think supplier diversity is an important part of your ESG, and that doing business with diverse businesses that represent all of the groups that are part of this panel really sits squarely in the S and your social impact. And so we know that when you're including diverse owned businesses, that you're going to outperform your peers. And that's important for your business. And it creates probably the largest economic opportunity that you can create for these small businesses that are owned by all these important facets. And, thank you for including disability as part of this discussion, because we are 15% of the global population, and we're 2 times more likely to be self-employed.
Thank you very much, Jill. Thank you. You all have brought in us together that our idea converged. That is, diversity is good. We all are because America today is not the homogeneous country that the corporation used to serve. They got to go to where the market is. We're the fastest growing market. They got to come to the customer and see who we are, what we need, and what we can provide. If they don't do that, for example, for the Asian American community, we are one of the fastest growing market in the country. And they don't come to us and talk to us and come to organizations like us and say, who are you? Where's the business? Where are the suppliers? They're leaving a lot of money on the table. Amen to all of that. What I now want to do is talk about the second question. And I'm going to go and jump to my second question. And if you could give me a minute to look for that. More and more corporations are measuring the impact of the supply diversity spend and measuring it. How much they spend on certified diverse businesses, minority, women, LGBT, disability, and veterans, plus Asian, Black, Hispanic, Native Americans. How do they measure the impact of doing business with these unique groups? Justin, again, take a...
Well, I think you can look at a couple of things. I mean, let's look at metrics. How many, we just did since we're not included in the census, LGBT Americans are not included in the U.S. Census still today in 2021. We went ahead and did our own economic census of LGBT-owned businesses. So we can see the direct impact that's happening in our community with jobs created, taxes paid, revenues growth, those sorts of things. And while we have not done one since the pandemic, we will do a follow-up on that. So I think that's one way that you can look at it. And obviously a lot of companies survey their existing supply base to find out different sorts of information that they want to know. The other thing is each of our organizations collects data on our certified suppliers. And while we wouldn't release that in individual, we certainly can pull aggregate information about where we see suppliers year over year. I think that's one way that companies can look at how their investment is working. I think also just as we come out of COVID, or we're looking towards what 2022 might look like, what is the engagement of these diverse business communities, and what is the engagement of the corporations? Something I want to make sure that we underscore here is that while I think we've all had a little bit of a respite on spending, please, as you look at going out into 2022, don't let dollars that you saved on travel and participation be the long-term solution to how you engage with communities. Otherwise, you sort of end up with the two sides of the coin, where you want to be spending more money, you want to be investing more in these communities, but somehow you're doing less by not being present. So I would just say to keep up commitment to re-engage on these issues and to work with us as partners to deliver the kind of data it is that you're looking for to prove your return on investment. Each year we do a sort of annual report, which is a corporate visibility report. Talks about where we are, where our suppliers are, and what our corporate partners have done to engage throughout that year. So those are just a couple of suggestions I'd have.
How about you, Pam? You've been on the both sides. You've been with Pfizer and all these wonderful companies before you change your heart and come to the diverse sector, and you have been on both sides of the aisle. Tell us.
Well, Susan, I don't know that I can say anything better than what Justin just covered there. But what I will say is I'm proud to see that corporate America is looking at economic impact and not just how much do we spend with, whatever of our classifications it would be. There really is a drive to understand the impact, and whether it's via the ESG initiatives that are underway, whether it's all diversity and inclusion activity, whether it's looking in the community, whatever those things are, there really is more of a drive for that now. It's no longer about reporting numbers, it's about reporting impact. And so that's very positive.
Great. Anybody else want to chime in? Anyone?
I would
Yes, Susan.
following up on Pam's statement real quick. One of the things again that we're seeing is not only the social justice elements of supplier diversity, but the understanding now is not just the impact on the company that they've brought in as a supplier, the employees, but they're understanding the impact in the community. They're understanding the impact in the family units. They really understand that with these programs now, they can actually help stabilize not only the lives of the owners and the employees, but in fact the neighborhood or community. And we salute that. It's something that we know as our veterans, once they complete their service, many of them never return to their original home, and we kind of got they scatter to the wind. But either way, wherever they end up settling, regardless of if it was our home or not, with the kind of help and support that we're now able to count on from our corporations, we can see how that helps stabilize their lives, their issues, and ultimately the family community.
Great. And Ron, did I hear your voice, Ron?
Yeah. Our community faced unique challenges last year. Many of us saw the murder of George Floyd. And after that, there was corporations that committed up to $6.6 billion of philanthropic and Black spend. To date, we've seen less than 500 million of those dollars actually hit the street. So impact is important. Transparency and accountability is extremely important. And when we talk to corporations about, we represent Black firms that do every type of industry. In every type of industry, every type of size. Our corporate partners say, well, yeah, Ron, we'd love to do more business with Black firms, but there are two challenges. And many of our other groups hear these as well. The first one being, we can't find them. And the second one is size and scale. And so, like the other organizations here, the Buy Black platform allows corporations to go find Black-owned businesses. So we remove the challenges and the concerns about not being able to find them. The second concern is really where the partnerships really start to lay. Because what we continuing as groups, leaders, we've got to make sure that we're always challenging debundling of contracts. Because size and scale is always going to be a challenge for minority businesses, because when you bundle contracts together, it's usually the white, male, established businesses that continue to be awarded the contracts year after year. And as we look at this new infrastructure bill that is about to hit the streets, there are going to be billions of dollars of contracts that are now going to be awarded. We collectively got to make sure that we're advocating on behalf of our small and unique individual businesses. So we've got to take away the challenge of not being able to find us. And then more importantly, how do we work together to create consortiums, joint ventures, partnerships, and where it makes sense, acquisitions. We've got to stop looking at each other as competitors and really start to say, okay, we are minorities now. We understand the unique roles and the businesses that we represent. But if you can put two and two of us together, you can now start having conversations about solutions of 7, 8, and even double digits. But we've got to start to see ourselves really more collectively working together, because individually, they will always continue to mark us against each other and always marginalize us.
Well, this is really a business case question for corporation, isn't it? For them to have a genuine, effective supply diversity program. And to measure it, whether it's effective, here are what we think they look at. We're looking inside of their own operation. First of all, if they were, as Ying said, there was a government contractor. They have $4 billion in federal contract. What were they trying to do? They're trying to satisfy the Small Business Administration's requirement that federal agency must contract a particular percentage, 5% for women, 3% for veterans, 3% for the socially and economically disadvantaged group, which is Asian, Black, Hispanic, and Native Americans. They want to comply with government regulation. That's the truthful answer. The market expansion, they need to bring money into the corporation so they can please their shareholders. As Jill said, they listen to what the investors want also. They want to improve efficiency. They want flexibility. They want innovation. And that altogether, if they gain that from the suppliers, that translates into profits. And finally, they want to have good PR, good corporate citizens. That's where ESG comes from, environmental, social, and governance. So I like to just move on because we're running a little short of time, and whatever you want to say for this particular corporation requirement to ask the supply diversity manager and director to say, well, you want me to give you $1 million in budget for supply diversity. Tell me why. That's what the CFO asked. We gave them some reason why, and we can't going to do that. I have a third question here. Certification. Okay, we talked about that earlier. Let me expand on it. Getting certified is an important step for minority and diverse suppliers if they want to be considered for opportunities in the federal government and commercial sector. That's step one. You don't get that, you don't buy the ticket, you don't get into the door at all. And President Biden's executive order 13985 instructed federal agency to increase their spending on minority businesses from 5 to 15% in the next 5 years. And last week, just at the end of last week, Congress passed a $1.2 trillion infrastructure bill. All that means is in the coming months and years, there will be plenty of opportunities for folks we represent here, minority and diverse businesses, to take part in this economic expansion. Our constituents should get certified. Now, let's reverse the role. If you are a corporation, what would you be giving your CFO or your boss as reasons for supporting organizations that certifies their respective unique constituents like us, USPAACC for the diverse PanAsian American business for the last 22 years, and for NOCC has been around for 40 plus years doing certification, and WeBank, NGLCC, Disability In, and the 2 veteran organizations. Okay. What are the reasons that you sitting in the corporation will give your boss, your CFO, for supporting all these different organizations? Pamela.
Well, thank you. That's one of my favorite things. I like to be efficient and I like to be effective. And for me, going to any of our organizations to reach our constituency, it is the most efficient and effective way that my buyers, my leaders in the organization can do what Ron said, which is find them. And then once you find them, know that they've had some additional training and development, and that they understand how to do business with corporate America and with the government. So for me, it's all about being efficient and being effective.
Great. How about you?
I'd say that when you work with our organizations and you truly include diverse businesses in your program, you're going to have greater total shareholder returns and economic profit margins.
Great. Well, you echo what Ying has said at the top of the program. That's the economic impact, and that is important. Can I ask Keith to come and give us, or Matt, either one of you?
I'll take it. Matt, jump in later with that right after me. Either way, what we deal with, and I think in the sense of answering the question, if I was supplier diversity talking to my CEO, is to not hire veterans. Is you're missing a group of people who have tremendous skills. There is no training anywhere in the world that compares to the military. You can go to all the colleges you want, but the leadership skills, the technical skills, the proof of doing that is all the cybersecurity came from the military. Drones came from the military. Even though, we all laughed at the vice president when he was saying that, the military invented the internet. The truth is we did. And it just came out the wrong way for him. But the fact of the matter is that we represent a tremendously talented, disciplined group of American citizens. And that group should never be ignored.
How about
Very
you?
well said. Yeah, very well said, Keith. I agree with all of that. And regarding the certification specifically, we've seen an incredibly increased demand for inclusion and diverse businesses in particular, and it's been coming to a head a lot lately in our industry in terms of diverse business inclusion. And the certification, I think, is critical because in many ways, when folks want to say they want to include diverse businesses, the desire is truly genuine. And the problem that I'm seeing now, and a lot of folks don't quite realize that some of these organizations have been around for as long as they have. NMSDC has been doing this for 50 plus years, and Pam, congratulations, you all have been doing this for nearly 30 years at this point. But there's still a lot of folks that are in the C-suites and a lot of these corporations that aren't familiar with supplier diversity and the reason these certification programs exist and why they're as rigorous as they are. And so when we try to do things to want to be inclusive of people and to give them opportunities to compete for business, if we're not making sure that they are who they say they are, we're actually going to have the opposite effect, because those businesses that are truly deserving of these opportunities are going to get pushed out by non-diverse firms that are going to be able to take advantage of these programs. So I think that it's, if I'm talking to executives inside of my corporation as a supplier diversity person, I'm going to echo the importance of the certification is to make sure these folks are who they say they are. So when we're actually doing opportunity or doing business with these folks, that we know it's going in the right direction.
Great. Anybody else like Raul and Ying and Justin?
Yeah, I have a lot to say about this. I will tell you that if I were to talk to the CEO of a major corporation as a procurement officer, what I would be saying to them is, give me the support that I need. We have found that diversity makes a difference, that decisions that are made with a group of folks from different backgrounds is a positive change and one that leads to more efficiency and greater outcomes, number one. Number two, we've also seen that those corporations that in the private sector that incentivize their employees to go out and make outreach efforts in the diverse communities will fare and do a much better job. We know that all of us, we get up, we have a lot of things to do, more things on our plate than we can possibly handle. And we have relationships that we bring to the table. It's just part of being a human in this country. And yet we're asking the procurement officers to go out there and develop new relationships, to take a chance on an unproven company, and to help provide support for organizations like those that are represented here today. That should be rewarded. That should be incentivized. That should be tracked. That's what I would say to my boss in any corporation is, help me, help you, help the world. Thank you.
Great. Ying?
Yeah, so this on the certification, simply put, you want to make sure these dollars are going to the right communities that we represent here as a group. And the thing is, the landscape have changed, as you know. George Floyd and simply putting racial equity on the federal agenda, as the new administration has done, caused competitive landscape to change. As a result, you're seeing new players for low cost to no cost certifications are entering the landscape, and some organizations even allowing self-certification. So as the ecosystem change, we as a group must rethink and transform and change. So we have to be intentional to make sure we as a group are continuing leading the pack on the certification and to be the gold standard for all of our buying entities.
Justin, did you raise your hand, Justin, or raise your voice?
I did, and I would just echo everything that's been said. I'm going to use Matt's point as a jump off here. If I were talking to my team, I would let them know there's one of two stories that are going to run. One is that we have authentically contracted with a myriad of certified diverse suppliers that have been thoroughly vetted. The other one is, and let's say we spend $10 million on a couple of contracts. The other story is we spent $10 million on a couple of contracts that were self-certified, not verified, not put through a rigorous certification process. And then the story is that we spent $10 million on fraudulent certified companies. That's a terrible story to have out there. It's a terrible story to have when you're trying to write the other one. And as Matt mentioned, the buyer is trying to be authentic in this. Companies really want to do it. And I would just say expediency should not be the bar by which companies are measuring themselves in terms of getting spend done in communities that are diverse. Having authentic spend with verified, certified suppliers that have been through a process that are exactly what they say they are on paper is the way to go. And you can get the quick fix and the quick press release, but I guarantee you're going to be writing another one about 6 months later, and the media won't be so kind on that one.
Right. Well, let me chime in on behalf of the PanAsian American, which means South Asian Pacific Islander Americans. That it encompasses folks who come from across the Pacific Ocean and the Indian subcontinent part of the world. For us, the Asian American has been lumped together as part of a minority group. And we got a problem with that. Within our own Pan-Asian American community, we are made up of 35 groups. The top 5 groups with more than 1 million population are the Chinese, South Asians, Filipino, Vietnamese, Korean, and Japanese Americans. And behind us, there are 29 subgroups speaking different languages, 100 languages and dialects. Practice different religions, have different paths to immigration, and all that. But they always call us part of the minority. And when I go to my community, they say, I am not a minority. I am an Asian American. I'm a Chinese American. I'm a South Asian Indian American, Pakistani American. So for corporations who are looking to tap into our market, and that's the first and foremost, of course, other social responsibilities is equally important because this is what America is all about. The equal playing field, to the best we could achieve that. So when we're lumped together as one big Asian American group as part of the minority, and we are also often upheld as the model minority. And that has created a major issue for us because in one big brush, we're considered as A students with a lot of resources from our families. There's nothing farther from the truth. The top 10, or maybe 15% are successful, wealthy Asian Americans, but there is a 10.1 to 10.5% at the bottom who are living at or below poverty level that nobody think about. And that's why the SBA, one part of the reason SBA look at us, because our work has 2 channels. Those who are very successful, who want to climb up that success ladder, those who have been left behind. And I think that corporations, they are sensitive about what America is made of. Particularly look at the last year or so when we are bringing a lot of people from other part of the country because they have problems. We've got to be able to look at organizations that represent unique constituencies, such as USPAACC, not just the disability in, the veterans, and the US Black Chamber. So much for my soap opera here. Let me go to the 4th question about working together with as a partnership. Up until now, all of us, our individual organizations have been advocating for our respective constituents pretty much on our own, and we have been quite effective at that. But if we can work together as a coalition toward the same goal of advocating for fair and equal opportunities, as so many of you have talked about today, for our constituents to be part of the supply chain for corporations, government, and large nonprofits who also buy a lot. Don't forget, and we will have a much powerful voice and create better results for folks that we have been formed to serve. We've been around for 36 years. We're formed to serve mainly the Pan-Asian American community because nobody paid attention to us then. And still now, there are plenty who ignore us, thinking they're very successful. Why are you here when we talk about minorities? So my question is, how could we further enhance our respective strengths and amplify the synergy to move forward, to ensure an even brighter future for the folks we were founded to serve? In which area can we work together going forward? Can I ask Keith to answer this question?
Yes, thank you, Susan. 9 years ago, when we began knocking on corporate doors to find out why veterans, veteran business owners, one, were not in supplier diversity. If corporations did not recognize veteran businesses and corporations. They were the ones that said, you know what, until you veterans create a certification that meets our standards, we're not going to risk our name, our reputation to include you in supplier diversity. And of course, we had all the social, the impact studies and all the different things about what it meant to be a veteran and lagging behind. So that part was set aside. But what the corporations did for the veterans, is they sent us to the Michigan Minority Supplier Development Council and to the Great Lakes Women Council. And I joke now, they took pity on us and said, yeah, come on, we will teach you. I absolutely believe that our certification and the acceptance of veteran businesses in supplier diversity was because of the women and the minority groups not only teaching us, training us, allowing us into their certification hearings, their processing, their paperwork, their rationale, why they did what they did. Literally, we went out in the streets and did on-site visits with them. That allowed myself and what first I call my partner, Brigadier General Dick Miller, and another small handful of us to learn certification. And what we did then is took the best of those two and did what we call an overlay of veteran certification. And we presented that all back to those same corporations back a year and a half after we first formed and then after our training. I can't think of anybody or anything that would be a stronger testament to why we should work together. They helped to create us, they helped to educate us. And I think the next extent to where, to answer your question, we have taken it upon ourselves to recognize the National Gay and Lesbian Chamber of Commerce certification, the National Minority certification, we make certifications, and saying, look, those are basically all the same in the collection of financial information, documentation, they're all very similar. The thing that we do, of course, is we certify that they're a veteran. And what we've been able to do with that is we call it a fast track. What we do is we do reach out to the organizations to make sure that, in fact, if somebody claims that they've been certified by one of those three, that their local RPO will confirm that that certification is still effective. And we'll waive a lot of that paperwork. Now, what it does is it one helps their members. It helps our members in order to become members. Simply because why am I making them go through the same process that I was taught by them in the first place? It makes no sense to me. And we've been doing this now, we've been certifying since 2014. So when you look at where we are and where we can go, I would love to see a more formalized relationship in the sense of the certification processes, and what we all agree to do. But again, in virtually every one of my presentations, I always think those two organizations as our mentor is a great example of working together and them stepping forward to help what I call our fellow veterans.
Who's raised his hand? Go ahead. Ron, go ahead.
I bring a unique perspective. I moved to Washington, D.C. in 2009, and I remember when I first got here, seeing the license plates of the D.C. residents, and it really resonated with me and my organization. And if you're not from the DMV, you may not have seen this, but it literally reads, taxation without representation. And for many of our groups, that's who we represent. Our businesses are from unique communities that don't have a voice in Washington, D.C. And so I think, and I've seen it work over these last dozen years or so, when we can come together on policy concerns that are representing our businesses across the globe, especially those businesses doing business in America, that's where we can have impact. Susan, Justin, Ramiro, and myself have gone on Capitol Hill, have gone to the White House and various agencies, and they don't really know where we're coming from. It's not a Black concern, it's not an Asian concern. This is truly a minority business concern. And when we can find collective issues that meet the needs of all of our communities, I think we can truly have a successful venue. I'll end with this. Over the last now almost 6 years, we heard a lot about making America great again. And we at the U.S. Black Chamber said we want America to be great as well. But in order for there to be a great America, there must be a great minority America. And the only way to have a great minority America is to have great minority businesses. And the way that you make sure that you have great minority businesses is to ensure that you have great minority chambers and chamber leaders. And when we can all work together to make sure that our voices are being heard at the highest level, both from corporate America as well as government agencies and the White House, that's how we win. When we take our communities and lump them together and say, this is what we're fighting for, Susan, Justin, Ying, and the rest of us, that's how we can move our businesses and our communities forward. Thank you.
Ying?
Yeah, I love that partnership spirit. You know, my life philosophy, I believe in mutually beneficial partnerships. All of us have a common mission, which is to be the voice and a growth engine for underrepresented businesses. I'm hitting about 100 day with NMSDC as a CEO. And during my first 100 days, I did many listening sessions. And I always ended my listening sessions with the one question, which is, if you had a magic wand that could change one thing to make NMSDC more successful, what would that be? And let me tell you, our corporate members, their magic wand is they want one database from all of us. And I think when we talk about specific areas for partnership, we should work together towards that solution. And I always say, if Match.com can match one person's wants with another person's attribute, why can't we as a group match corporate members' requirements or by entities' requirements with diverse businesses' capabilities? And then the second area for collaboration, to Ron's point, is on advocacy. As you know, last week, 1.2 trillion infrastructure bill was passed, and this represents a once in a lifetime opportunity for our diverse businesses to participate in a nationwide infrastructure build out. And as you know, the last time the US government invested in our country in this way at this scale was after World War II. And so people only think of construction work when they think of infrastructure build out, but it's more than that. The build out requires technology, material, logistical services. It needs designing firms, engineering firms, architectural firms. We represent all of these companies. It needs accounting and legal services. So billions of dollars are at stake for all of our businesses that we represent. And so we need to work together on advocacy for maximum inclusion of diverse businesses in the infrastructure build out. And there's old saying that if you want to go fast, go along. But if you want to go far, go together.
Thank you. Anybody else? Raul?
Yeah, thank you very much, Susan. I you know, if this morning has shown us anything, is that there's a number of points of unity among all of us, and that we are moving in the same direction. I do think that given our stage as representatives on a national basis, there's a unique opportunity for us to work together, not just on the certification process, but also advocating and make sure those that $1 trillion package that's going to be coming out is cut up in a manner that we can participate in. That's going to require additional advocacy there. I also think that there's a number of states that are coming out with very unique pieces of legislation. California, where I come from, has a law that requires California-based organizations to have a woman on the board of directors. And we know that if you're not at the table, you're on the menu and you're going to get eaten out, right? So I think that if we were to take a look at some of these steps that are coming out at the local, national level, and we united together and formed a common platform of points of common interest of all of us, I think that makes a tremendous amount of sense and would make our jobs that much more effective.
Great. Well, I want to reserve this last 45 seconds for Justin to come in and talk about how could we all organizations work together, because I know that Ron talked about how USPAACC, US Black Chamber, US Hispanic Chamber, and NGLCC have worked together for the last 6 years continuously. I've been talking about it, bragging about it all over the country, that every year we have our members come together 4 times in one place, 2 days each time. And we garnered a lot of momentum, and we have done that in our own way. But Justin, I think you have much more bigger value, and Pam alluded to that earlier.
Well, thanks, Susan. First of all, what a delightful conversation we've had here, and so much good ground to cover. I think we could talk all day long. You know, if you look at it, really, I have our organizational parents here. WeBank and USHCC were 2 of the first organizations we reached out to when we founded NGLCC nearly 20 years ago. And I will call you my very gracious aunt, because it wasn't long after we were on the scene that I met you, and you were nothing but welcoming and open. And I hope our friends at USPC and the veterans groups and certainly Disability In feel as though we did that same in kind, because it is about helping one another succeed. And, you know, in fact, Ying brought up a great point. In fact, many of our groups, those of us that are in the certification space, are actually working on that solution right now, because we've heard so much from so many of our collective stakeholders. And so being responsive, being able to partner up with one another around those responsive efforts to better serve our shared stakeholders is something that we're very passionate about. I'm really thrilled that we've teamed up with WeBank to sort of push that forward and make sure that we're being responsive. And I think the other thing, to Ron's point, policy. And so many of us have affiliates around the country. They say, well, we don't want to be partisan. You don't have to be partisan, but you do have to be policy. You got to be looking at what is in the collective interest of our shared diverse stakeholders, because rarely is something that is good for Asian American business or Black-owned business or women-owned business. I'd say rarely, if ever, are those not good for LGBT businesses. So when you do better, we do better. And that's just a matter of how we collaborate, how we come together. You know, there are very few things that we haven't solved behind closed doors when we have disagreements to better serve our shared stakeholders, because so many of one another's members are also veterans, are also people with disabilities, women, LGBTQ, you know, across the board, ethnic minorities. So I just want to say thanks to you for putting this together and constantly being open to collaborate. And I think over the years, many of our groups have done this and will continue to do so. So thank you.
Great. All right. Well, as Ying said, and others have mentioned, the infrastructure bill and President Biden's executive order is putting some more oil in that engine for us to drive our car forward. And there is room for everyone. We can create alliances-based programs to benefit our members. Some of them may be unique to our members' need, as you can see the diversity of constituents that we represent. And together, we will be stronger. And when we are stronger, we create that good energy, because our work together will truly represent everybody in the United States of America, because we don't only have Asian, Black, Native American, Hispanic, but we have white men and women, veterans, folks with disabilities, and all that, and gay and lesbian. So therefore, we are in here in this group a microcosm of America. I want to thank our panelists for this candid and very substantive discussion. I hope our viewers and audience have learned how each of our unique organizations could help you become part of the value chain in the commercial or government sectors or both, and learn about why certification is important. There is a home for you to go to wherever you feel most comfortable to get your certification. For Asian Americans, and most of our people come from an immigrant background. 66% of us come from are immigrants or sons and daughters of immigrants. So indeed, you want to go to a place like a home away from home, USPAACC is here for you. But look at all this diversity of organization you can go to and find your home, especially for your particular niche. There's much to do together across the country to lift up minority and diverse businesses. We must continue to promote inclusion, equality, development, growth, and opportunities to get that foot in the door. We have work to do, folks, together. Now, following this session at 1:15 is our Business Express workshop. It is open to those who pre-registered for the session. And at 3:30, we hope to see you at our Synergy Awards ceremony. It's something new again. We will celebrate how entrepreneurial spirit, combined with phenomenal partnerships and collaboration between corporate, government, and academic entities, PanAsian American and other minority and diverse-owned businesses could drive robust growth and success in the fast-growing, diverse business community. Thank you again to our esteemed panelists, and thank you all to our viewers and audience for tuning in. See you at the next event. Thank you again, panelists. Stay with us for a little while as we do a little bit of reflection. Bye-bye, all of you who have tuned in for this wonderful, perfect A+ session because of our panelists.